1st of March, a brand new chapter in the Dan Really Likes Wine story. About 6.5 years or thereabouts after Michael Jordan bullied me into starting the show, we start a partnership with Norman Goodfellows that promises to take our love and celebration of wine to another level entirely. Amongst other things, a new Dan Really Likes Wine digital pop-up store with rare vintages, unusual wine, boutique producers, special offers, stuff you won't often see, and stuff that I think really speaks to the heart of South African wine. Not only South African wine though, now and again we'll be delving into those lesser known winemaking countries like France and Italy and Spain, and checking out wine from all over the world to see how it compares with the best of South Africa. A lot will be staying the same, still 2 live shows and a magazine show every single week online, and look out for the growth of the Wine Squad, our brand new offshoot show, but we'll also be experiencing a whole lot of brand new adventures, and all in partnership with Norman Goodfellows. Dan really likes wine. As you can see, so do Norman Goodfellows. And so from the 1st of March, catch us live every Monday and Thursday, the magazine show every week, plus the digital pop-up store, cool events together, and a continued celebration of just why South Africa, for value and quality, is the best wine country on the planet. So there we go. That is the big announcement. You probably could have guessed it from the last few weeks and the excitement on social media, but it is now official. Dan Really Likes Wine and Norman Goodfellows starting a fantastic journey together, which is why we're enjoying a rather special day with Delaire Graff, who I'll be introducing very shortly, and kicking off this brand new relationship at the store in Four Ways Crossing. Now, if you haven't been to this store, depending on where you're watching us around South Africa or indeed around the world, it's roughly the size of Belgium. It is ridiculous. It's where I want to get locked up forever. It's a fabulous spot full of fabulous people, and 2 of those people are with me. And Burley, Jason, lovely to have you here. And welcome to an occasion I'm really, really excited about. And generally when it's stuff around wine, I get quite excited. But for me, what I've found with you guys as an amazing collection of wine is the fact that I think we share a fairly similar philosophy, in that, yes, we both have businesses around the world of wine, but we love wine. We love seeing South African wine do well. And I think, having all traveled a bit, we understand just how good South African wine is, especially when you're not having to pay for it in euros in somewhere like Paris, Jason.
I think last year I learned some hard lessons in life with quite a bit of travel and realizing that South African wine is outstanding value for money. In fact, there's nowhere in the world that I think competes with it. And when you are traveling, never mind being tough on your pocket. Even though being tough on your pocket, it can still be tough on your palate.
It's a wine space that South Africa delivers so much on, but it's one that the Dan Really Likes Wine show and platform tries to broaden in Bali. We try and speak to more people, get them to understand just how good our wine is, and I think that's something that Norman Goodfellows does really well.
Absolutely, Dan, and we're very passionate about our customers, about our people, and we want to show that passion through what we do in our everyday activities, and part of that is accessibility. We've got stores in, Joburg, Cape Town, and Durban, and apart from that, you can come into our stores and have the amazing and best service, as well as the education that you need in order to not feel intimidated. To not feel intimidated by pulling up, or putting a glass of wine into your basket for somebody's birthday. It's all about, accessibility, a little bit of education, and also just going through the journey with you as well. It's a journey, and that's what we're here for. It's the journey.
And it's a fun journey, and it's one that we really enjoy. If we go back to a previous live, Jason, which I know you look back on with very little fondness, when spreadsheets were the order of the day and you were an out-and-out accountant, now you get to wake up and at 8:30 in the morning have a glass of Chardonnay, and it's purely research. There's that fun element, but it's a really vibrant industry, and I think it's one that we all feel has done really well up to a point, but there is still so much potential we can untap.
I think there's a huge potential in the quality of wine we get, in the vast variety of wine we get. My journey on wine actually started fairly young. I think I had a friend of mine, his parents were into wine, and started enjoying fairly good wine, I suppose, from my age at 18, 19. And I remember having an anniversary for a girlfriend. And I drove all the way from where I lived to the Norman Goodfellows Lovo store because I knew somehow that was where you went to get advice on wine. And they sold me a bottle of, I remember correctly, Baxberg, I think it was. And I remember it cost me over $100. It seemed like a fortune to me at the time. And but it was, so my journey with Norman Goodfellows started that early, and with somehow knowing for someone who didn't know a lot that was the place to go to buy wine.
Is that girlfriend now Mrs. McAvoy?
No, she's not.
Don't buy Baxberg, it does not work.
Mrs. McAvoy's got much more expensive taste.
Well, I can actually tell you that Baxberg does work because I got married at Baxberg. My wife and I remember that fondly. But that's exactly what speaks to what we do and what you guys do as well. Marketing in any space is about storytelling, and we could sit here and talk about malolactic fermentation and time on lease and residual sugar and other things that within about 3 seconds everybody would be tuned out and watching something else. What we can talk about instead are the stories and things that people actually remember and identify with, and that's what brings wine alive.
Absolutely, Dan. And we were talking about storytelling. That's what I do every single day, and live, breathe, and eat storytelling. And you were speaking about, that moment of relation and that moment of reflection as well that you have with friends, family, and even when you're in a social event for work, that work event becomes that much more excitable, that much more fun, that much more rememberable. And that's what wine does. That's what, good quality alcohol does. It brings people together. And outside of storytelling, it's all about occasions, which again, Norman Goodfellows is all about occasions. And
that also, Bali, changes people's perspective, because somebody who doesn't drink wine and you tell them, right, here's a bottle of wine, it costs 500 rand, and you've got a raised eyebrow, I'm not paying that. Fast forward down a wine journey and suddenly you understand why and the craft that's gone into it and the history and the time in barrel and all of these different elements. Suddenly you've got a different proposition entirely.
Absolutely. It's all about how these small little unique qualities make up this magical experience. And when you try and box experience in terms of rands and cents, you can't do it. It's all about the feeling and the emotion. And sometimes you just cannot put rands and cents into a feeling or emotion. It just comes out of you, and then you really understand, all right, I understand now why it's 500 rand a bottle of wine.
There is a lot that we're going to be doing together, Jason. One of the parts I'm very excited about is this digital pop-up store, and it gives me the opportunity to play God with wine and to choose from the various friends I have in the wine industry. Here are a couple of cases of an older vintage. Here's a boutique producer. It's not going to be earth-shattering volumes of wine, but for me it's a really nice gateway that allows people to go in and I've never tried that grape, I've never heard of that producer, oh, that wine's from my birth year. You can find stuff which just broadens that storytelling process and gives people a chance to try something they might not always have access to.
And I think also the when you hear about a wine or you see something on the show, to be able to then go and buy it and experience in your own home. And I think wine for me is having a meal without wine is a battle. And to put on record that I don't have wine at work with lunch with some barley can verify. But the thought has crossed my mind. And that memories also, stories and memories are often associated with good wine and good times.
Absolutely.
One of the areas that I think we've been reasonably successful in the last 6 and a bit years of Dan Really Likes Wine is getting more people to believe in South African wine. I think we often, and not just in wine in South Africa, have this sometimes subconscious belief that because it's foreign, it is better. It comes from America or it comes from Europe, must be better. Whereas I really feel in the last number of years, people understanding not just is our wine less expensive, but actually a top Stellenbosch blend matches a Bordeaux. A great bottle of South African Chardonnay can match up with a top Burgundy. We're making this progress in Bali.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only are we making the progress in the alcohol industry, it's in sports and culture, all these other facets of South Africa. And it's about us being actually very proud about where we come from, what we're able to do, what we're able to produce as well. I know we have a lot of issues and problems in our country, but absolutely outside of the negative, there's so much more positive that we need to kind of embrace and actually, number one, own from an ownership perspective, and also not be afraid to, shout it out across the world. Show and tell the Italians and the French and the German, of our, Chardonnays and our Chenin plants, because we are just as proud of that, being a South African.
What about the actual numbers? Although you are no longer an out-and-out accountant, that DNA is hard to entirely throttle. And I know that there is the business element one has to keep an eye on. From that perspective, after some pretty tough years for a lot of industries, but the wine industry in particular in South Africa, are we out of those woods, Jason? And are you seeing South African wine with a horizon that we can look forward to with a great deal of optimism?
I think there's if you take you spoke about sort of premium brands and people experiencing or believing that foreign is better. I mean, I think you take some brands like Belafonte, for example, where they've managed to elevate a South African brand right to the top, and in wine there's so much choice that it's hard to build a brand, and there's certain guys that have done that particularly well. But take brand out of it. South African wine is doing in our business very well. I also think if you broaden that to sparkling or MCC versus champagne, I think on a blind tasting, many people would be very surprised at how we compete against the French, or Prosecco for that matter. And sometimes with liquor, you have to separate price and brand from what you're actually drinking. And my favorite kind of tasting is a blind tasting where I'm tasting without knowing what I'm tasting, because you come with all sorts of preconceived ideas when you see a bottle of shiny yellow champagne.
We've got a lot of very exciting activations planned. We're going to be doing a lot of great stuff together. One of the ones that kicks off, it's one of these where I'm almost slightly upset that I can't be part of it. And unfortunately, I'm afraid the same applies to the two of you.
Absolutely.
Because there is a rather cool competition in Bali, and we're going to be speaking to the Global Director of Luxury Indulgence at Delaire Graff in just a moment when he sachets in to drink some wine and tell us in more detail about what's on the horizon. But anybody who buys a bottle of Delaire Graff, either online or in one of the stores over the month of March, is in for something of a treat.
So much of a treat that I'm also even disappointed, Dan, that I can't win this for myself.
You can always resign, I suppose, and then enter the competition. Jason wouldn't be very
I
happy.
wouldn't be happy, you know. But absolutely, Dan, I'm very excited to not only partner with you, but to have this competition available for, you know, current and future NGF customers. And if you're not a customer, please get down to your nearest NGF store. Can I tell them what it is?
I think you can. We'll get the full detail in a moment, but let us know. What is it?
As Dan mentioned, buy any bottle of Delaire Graff in any of our Norman Goodfellows stores. And if you can't make it to a store, we've got, you know, www.ngf.co.za. You can buy online and stand a chance to win a weekend at the Delaire Graff estate in Cape Town for 2 nights. I mean, if that's not a prize to drool over, then I don't know what is. Especially now when we have no more COVID restrictions, people can travel and enjoy themselves outdoors and indoors. Why don't you take that into another place and have amazing wine?
I see a big grin to your left because you've actually been down and stayed there, haven't you, Jason?
I have. It's a very special place. Outside of the accommodation, which is outstanding, a little bit bigger than my home. The art on the estate, throughout the estate, both including sculptures in the gardens. It's a very special place, and spending time there is a real treat.
Well, not only that, there are also some flights involved, thanks to the guys at Airlink, who are also celebrating a very important day today, and I will come back to you with a little more of that later on in the show. Before we usher you guys off to go and drink some more wine and try and acquire some fake IDs to enter this competition, Bali, tell me a little bit very quickly about your customer loyalty program, because I know that's one that has a lot of excitement.
Absolutely. So we've got a customer loyalty program called loyalty, and customers who buy online and finish up their registration process gets a what we call SIP coins, and they can redeem those SIP coins every time they purchase towards a future purchase at an NGF store or online. So please, if you're in an NGF store and you want to sign up, just make sure someone at the store helps you. Sign up is very, very quick and easy, and you are going to be the first to know about all our NGF specials, competitions like the one we've just mentioned now, and it just puts you at the forefront of everything amazing in terms of alcohol and NGF.
Why not? join up. Jason, in closing, as you work your way through some of the Delaire Graff Bottomless Cop, there will be people watching, oh, this sounds really exciting, even more reason to be watching Dan Really Likes Wine and to engage with everything we're doing. What about the actual shopping process? Why, from a perfectly neutral perspective, if I'm saying, yeah, but I can go and buy, I've got a liquor store just down the road from me, I'll go there instead. But what for you says Norman Goodfellows is that cut above, and people really should make the effort to give the experience a go?
So Norman Goodfellows, in its 47th year this year, has always been known for range and for knowledge. So if you walk into any of our stores around the country, there are only 7, you will be able to get advice on which wine to buy, on what to pair, what goes well with what, and we are very aggressive on price. We have a preconceived idea that our pricing is expensive. I challenge you to compare us to our competitors, and you'll see that you're actually getting great value, a great retail shopping experience with high-end customer service and product knowledge.
I think that sounds like a pretty good starting point. Far more importantly, of course, they're now the official partners of Dan Really Likes Wine, and that should seal the deal. Guys, you've got plenty of wine to get through and a really nice day to celebrate, which leaves me just to say thank you, because it's such an exciting opportunity. I know we've got a long journey ahead. There is going to be a lot of wine research to do, and I'm counting on you both to help me out with that.
Well, I hope it's a practical research project.
It is indeed. These are the sacrifices we must make. Guys, thank you. Thank you for today, and thank you for the adventures we have ahead of us.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you, Dan.
So there we go. Jason McAvoy and his boss, Malizondo, who together with the dream team at Norman Goodfellows, introducing not just this brand new partnership, which kicks off today, the 1st of March, but also the adventures we have in store and that competition. Now, as they were announcing that, they were sipping on some of the Bottomless Cop, and I've got some of it here as well. For me, if you combine quality and value, this is just exceptional from Delaire Graff, but exceptional is fairly standard when it comes to the estate, and even more so, the sartorial appearance of those who work there. So let me welcome in our next guest for today, who has very bravely, Damien Gilbert, fought off the terror of leaving Stellenbosch to come up to Johannesburg and come to join us. Cheers. And, welcome. Lovely to have you here. And yeah, it's an exciting one ahead, and one that has got a really important Delaire Graff element for what we're doing. Let's kick straight off with a look at the space. So people who don't know Delaire Graff, they haven't heard about it. It sounds pretty cool. It sounds rather upmarket, and from the words of Jason and Varley, just sounds terrific. Give us a quick introduction to the property.
So the property is owned by Lawrence Graff, who is a Demantier who started his career in the 1960s when he started as an apprentice jeweler, and then he put together a cluster of diamonds, which immediately sold, and then was commissioned for another, and that catalysted a career which now amounts to about 56 diamond boutiques around the world. So Geneva, Gstaad, Tokyo, Singapore, Paris, all over the world. And in 2003, he bought a property in Stellenbosch. And that property he bought because on the estate, we talk about the pursuit of perfection. And the soil was deemed by analysis as one of the most highest potential in the country, so 10 out of 10. And so he bought that with a vision of making the best Cabernet we could produce in South Africa. The property is about 40 hectares, and then we have 17 odd hectares under vine. The rest is an indigenous sustainability project, and then about 400 pieces of his private art collection, of which he's one of the largest modern art collectors in the world. And in 2003, we closed the property, remodeled, 2009, reopened with 16 luxury, I mean, we're talking about the highest level of luxury in the world, lodges and a villa, 2 restaurants, a spa, 450 indigenous plants in the garden, of which we're one of the top 10 in the world, with Relay and Chateau, and then a few retail solutions, including the only South African continent boutique for Graff.
That's a fair array of attractions, and that, I think, should have sold you rather comprehensively on Delaire Graff. But just in case it hasn't, before we detail this amazing competition we have, let's go and have a look at the estate. And here's a little clip of the beauty of Delaire Graff. All right, touches the food, of the glamour, of the glitz of Delaire Graff. I love coming down. It's always difficult. People say to you, what do you think is the estate with the best view in all of Stellenbosch? And there are a number of contenders. I've just spent some time at a couple of them. But when you sit on that deck at the restaurant, a glass of summer court in hand, looking out over the mountain, it's a miracle any of you actually ever get any work done down there.
And my office looks onto that view as well, so I'm very privileged in that respect. As you said, there's very few places in the world actually that have that kind of aspect. Maybe Piemonte, the deck of Marchesi de Greci, or Onaduro. So as you sit in maybe Quinta La Rosa and you look at the valley and along the river, there are very few areas which have such dramatic impact on your senses than that deck. When you're sitting having lunch, just watching nature go by as opposed to the world go by. It's wonderful.
There's also the Keg and Centurion, but we won't delve too much into that detail. Let's instead delve into the detail of the competition. And you've been extremely generous as a Delaire Graff team, kicking off this new partnership. We wanted to do so with a bang, and you were very happy to jump in. Two people, one of them will have bought a bottle of Delaire Graff, hopefully more than that, over the course of the month of March, is in for something rather special. Explain to us what's in store.
Yeah, so we'll welcome them to the estate, check them into one of the lodges, and those lodges are architectural pieces of art. They are designed by David Collins' studio in London, and they house part of the art collection on the estate, so that there will be pieces around the property. There are about 4 to 5 staff members per guest on the estate, so when you're there, you really want for nothing. The value proposition in terms of what makes the difference between a great bed, a great pillow, a great view is really service. And then all the other touch points that you don't think of, like the turn down service being just everything that you require. The slippers laid out, the chocolates, the breakfast snacks, the bar being refilled, all that kind of stuff is just done to precision. And so breakfast is then served in the Sheen restaurant, and that is we're very proud to have Chef Virgil Khan on the property. He's been with the property for, I think, about 15 years. Originally at Delaire Graff restaurant, and then was given the opportunity to have Indochine. And so breakfast just on that deck, looking over the Hottentots Nature Reserve. So you have the Simmonsburg on one side and the Hottentots on the other. It really is an incredible space, which is unparalleled, really.
And that is where you could be to win that opportunity. It's very simple, either online or one of the 7 stores nationwide. Buy any bottle of Delaire Graff and you stand a chance to win that 2-night stay, including flights from Airlink, who today celebrates Skybucks, their brand new frequent flyer program that kicked off today, the 1st of March, and which goes back 3 months. So it's the 1st of December. If you've flown on Airlink, you can get those Skybucks and use them all. So coming down to stay in luxury, to enjoy the warmth of hospitality for which you guys are famous, and to just have an extraordinary stay with flights, and also to try some wine, which leads me to this particular wine and the fact that this is sitting on the brand new Dan Really Likes Wine digital pop-up on Norman Goodfellows. For me, it's a wine that sits as a I call this almost premium value because yes, it's not an inexpensive bottle of wine, but when you drink it, you'd expect it to be a lot costlier than it actually is. And with this, you consistently deliver something that I think speaks beautifully to the terroir of the top of that Banhoek Valley, but also celebrates Mornay, his winemaking skill, and crafting something in this bottle that just over-delivers time and again.
Agreed. I think we spoke, or Jason spoke earlier on about areas in the world, Bordeaux, for instance, and this is the Cabernet Sauvignon de Merlot, the Petit Verdot, Cabernet Franc, and then a touch of Malbec blend, which you would find in that area. But you know, we produce a very different style to Bordeaux. Where we situate is absolute Cabernet country, and then just on that extended area, you talk about the Bordeaux Triangle in South Africa, but really we should call it the South African Triangle because the grapes perform exceptionally well. They exhibit such flavour, such profile that is world class when blended or put together as a single varietal.
Well, the man who's made all this wine, he's waiting online for us. We're going to jump across to him. Before we do that, though, thank you for giving us a great platform to kick off this new partnership. Some terrific wine to do it with. And 3rd of April, we will be letting you know who is coming down to holiday with Damien.
And we look forward to welcoming them.
Perfect, Damien, thank you. There we go. I think the official title is Global Head of Luxury Indulgence down at Delaire Graff, and I can't think of a better person for the job. Now, he, of course, just swans around tasting wine down at Delaire Graff. In terms of someone who does some actual work down at the estate, let us catch up with the man in the red cap. Our winemaker is down on the property in the middle of harvest. Mornay Frey, welcome. Lovely to have you back on the show, and lovely to have you in the context of such an important day for Dan Really Likes Wine. Give us an update, first of all. I think you've been hauling some Chardonnay in today. How's harvest going? How is 2023 looking?
Yeah, Dan, it's hi everybody, and welcome to the show, and thank you for the opportunity. We quite busy with the harvest. We have expecting quite a bit of rain on the weekend, so we try to get off some vignettes that we think should come off before the rain on the weekend. But yeah, it's fantastic harvest. I mean, in my history of Delaire, I think we last made such great Sauvignon Blancs and Chardonnay since the 09 vintage. So for me, it's a great honor to work with these fantastic grapes this year, especially with the analysis and flavors I've seen in a very, very long time. So super excited, and the grapes look healthy, and yeah, we're just going on.
Well, that speaks to wines of the future and over the next 3, 4, 5 years, and certainly more in the case of a number of the reds. Wine for now, though, is what a lot of people are suddenly very, very interested in, because if they hadn't been planning to buy Delaire Graff, they most certainly are now, given there is a holiday up for grabs, thanks to Dan Really Likes Wine, Norman Goodfellows, and Delaire Graff. They're going to be coming down to lounge about in luxury and enjoy the hospitality. They're also going to be coming to try some of the wine. And one of the real allures of coming to Delaire Graff is that you tick boxes across a whole range of varietal and style, from bubbles through some terrific whites up to what for me are the signature reds from your particular part of the world. For people who perhaps don't know the Delaire Graff range too well, Mornay, give me, for you as a winemaker, some of the wines that really stand out that you would give to people visiting for the first time to really introduce them to what the essence of Delaire Graff is for you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So just in brief summary, we're only 16.5 hectares of vineyard on the farm. We focus mainly on Chardonnay on the white, and then of course Cabernet is by far our biggest planted red, and this is a site for Cabernet and for Chardonnay. And then of course we got some of the other Bordeaux varieties. Cab Franc, that's got a big part of it. We do also have a very nice old vine Merlot block, that's the oldest vine on the farm. And yeah, so we make quite a few wines, but a Chardonnay, the Banhoek Chardonnay, of course, for me is a very important wine for us for the estate. It really showcases the valley, it showcases Delaire, it showcases our commitment to quality. But of course, we just finished with our white harvest today, and that's mainly with Sauvignon Blanc that we also do on the estate. And the Sauvignon Blanc is it's some fruit from the estate, but we try to get like a multi-regional blend, try to pigeonhole a certain style of Sauvignon. So we get fruit from Durbanville, Darling, and then from our own fruit. So it's super exciting. And then of course our Cabernet Franc Rosé is of course a big hit and a big, very popular wine that we have here on the state. So we actually got a big weekend ahead of processing the 2023 rosé. And yeah, so and then on the reds, of course, we're going to try the Botmaskop now, and then we go onto the cabs, which is our main focus on the estate. So yeah, it's a bit of everything, and then a bit of some fortified wine, some ports, and then if you want to start the lunch or the dinner, we've got a sparkling wine made from Chenin Blanc, Chardonnay, and Cabernet Franc.
There's really not much that Mornay and his team can't produce for you. You speak about having a big weekend ahead of rosé. Our winners have got a big weekend of indulgence ahead of them when they do get down to Delaire Graff, including the wine which we not only drink now because it's really good, but also because it sits in a limited volume. I think the 2016 on the new Dan Really Likes Wine pop-up on Norman Goodfellows. And it's a wine which I think of the dozen or so times I've come down to visit you guys, always seems to pop up for a tasting because it might not be the most expensive wine that you produce, but for me it's a real signature Mornay, not just of Delaire Graff, but also of you personally in terms of sculpting a wine that speaks for me so vibrantly to both terroir and winemaker.
Yeah, the 2016 Botmaskop is a very special wine. It was definitely for us one of those vintages where I've learned a lot in my own career as a winemaker, purely because of the fact that we had a lot of rain that year. It was a very cool season, and the juice and the grapes wasn't as powerful as that brilliant 2015 vintage that we had the previous year. So 16 was by far the kind of the classical vintage, and I'm extremely excited tasting the wine now. I haven't tasted it for a while, and I've got a glass now next to me just to kind of have a reference. But I'm super excited. I've told everybody in the office and the team that the 16 vintage, it's going to be a late bloomer. It's going to take a while for it to really show its true colors, purely because of the cooler vintage we've had. So we didn't pick it at high ripe levels. So we could manage to get a very nice finesse, nice perfume. And the only benefit with this is time. I think it really shows now. 2016 is just really a wine that did and can still age extremely well. And it's also something that we learned how to handle the fruit differently to get a bit of that extra freshness, get a bit more of that kind of essence of the estate and the valley. So it's really exciting to also taste it again and to reconfirm what I thought when we made the wine.
You're not the first winemaker I've spoken to in the last little while to talk about 2016 in those terms. It's been a bit of a hidden vintage in many ways. 15 was such a big blockbuster with that poor sour 100 points leading everyone towards I must buy 2015. And then slowly but surely 17 crept onto the radar and we realized, hang on, 17 might actually in the long run be even better. And 16 fell in that collective shadow a little, but it seems with this Botmaskop being a great example, it's here that's starting to emerge out of that shadow and really start to fight on its own terms.
Absolutely. I think the great thing about this wine is also the I believe in Delaire is to have very little or no virus infected vineyard, so not a leaf roll, so we could manage to hang longer, and the vines was healthy and they kept going. Even if it was a cooler year, we managed to have extra longer hang time and managed to just really produce this really kind of elegant, finesse-driven style of blend, which I'm very happy about, and I think it's something that we can still enjoy for the next 10 years.
All right, one for you to try when you get down to Delaire Graff. If indeed you are the winner, and to become the winner, you just need to buy a bottle or 300 of any Delaire Graff you like online or from the stores. Before we let you go back to harvest, because it is such a high-pressure time for the winemaking team, steering completely away from wine. We've got people who get the chance to jump on an airlink flight and come down to Stellenbosch and enjoy the majesty of Delaire Graff. Yes, the wine is sensational. That is eminently clear. You've been there for a fair while now, Mornay. Give me one other element of Delaire Graff that you think really adds to the magic of the place that people can look forward to experiencing should they be lucky enough to win this great competition with Norman Goodfellows.
Yeah, for me, the greatest thing, this morning I drove all the way to the top of the farm, and it sits about 540 meters above sea level. It's really spectacular because we're so mountainous, and in the valley here with like some of the best views in Stellenbosch, if not the world. It's really special, and how well our farm is manicured, and so it's all pristine, and it's so clean and fresh to come here. So early morning walks around the farm is just spectacular.
Well, if you needed any further reason to enter this competition, you have it. A very authentic celebration. Monet, good luck with the rest of Chardonnay today. Good luck with the rest of the harvest. It's nice to see somebody from Delaire Graff doing something other than just drinking large amounts of wine and putting it on his marketing budget. And we look forward to sending our winners down to meet you a little later this year.
Yeah, thanks. Then, we're looking forward for the winners to come, and we'll definitely arrange a tasting and a bit of a show around the winery, of course. So, yeah, good luck to the winner, and thank you, Jan, for this great initiative.
There we go. Monet Frey, winemaker at Delaire Graff. Monet, thank you for joining us from the estate in the middle of harvest. Talking about, amongst other things, a competition that everybody would want to win, even those people who spend their lives living it up in 7-star accommodation, bathing in French champagne, having foot massages from Sashi Naidu in luxury safari lodges. Who could I possibly be talking about? Well, the Joburg foodie has emerged from Cape Town, because that's, of course, where the Joburg foodie lives, to come and join us. Stephen, welcome back on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a
Lovely
pleasure.
to have you. And I guess, like me, I mean, we get to do some pretty cool stuff a lot of the time, but the chance to go and stay at Delaire Graff, it really is a cut above.
100%. I mean, I'm still going to go and just sort an arrangement now with Damien to see if we can make that happen. But no, I love visiting Delaire. I actually had a fantastic meal in Indochine last month. And it's just such a special place. It's, there's just one of those very rare situations where class and money collide. And I think they've done it so magnificently.
I do indeed, and it's an element that is so important for me in terms of our wine industry, in that offering that broader dimension, so that when people come along, yes, you're going to drink some extraordinary wine, but there is also that brilliant restaurant, or that incredible place to stay, or that wonderful art collection, or that boutique diamond store, or things that Delaire has all wrapped up in one. This is a hell of a weekend to go on.
No, without a doubt, and I think it's important what you touch on, because in this echo chamber of our industry, we often talk about how do we expand, the wine consumer. And I think by offering experiences, it's such an easy way to get people to buy into not only brand, but to buy into wine. And I think whoever is in for that trip away is in for an absolute treat.
They are indeed. Now, to go on that trip, you can buy some wine. Part of that wine could be on the new Dan Really Likes Wine digital pop-up, which sits with Norman Goodfellows. There are a number of wines there, and there's one in particular. I'm not sure if you've drunk this recently. I know you would have drunk a fair bit of it over time. I drank some from this vintage over the weekend. 2013 Ernie Els Signature, a wine that was the first ever $100 wine in the American market. We now have the 2013 available on the digital pop-up, and it's that kind of big luxury red wine that I know you and I can be persuaded to try from time to time.
Yeah, on not an easy day. I haven't tried the 2013, but I'll take your word for it that it must be a killer. 2013 was actually quite an interesting vintage. There wasn't much noise about it when it was, happening, but now that we are finding these older vintages and finding stuff that has been kept back, I think it's proving itself one that is aged fantastically.
Well, I'll have to get you some to sample it and to try it. And that leads to the big part of doing this particular pop-up is something that you and I both love doing, and that's exploring older vintages, boutique producers, unusual wines, getting that stuff that broadens your wine education and does so by having to drink wine, which is always welcome.
It's a terrible burden, but someone has to do it, and I think we're very fortunate to be those people. Are you feeling okay, by the way, Dan?
I have got a rather nasty throat at the moment, so I'm nursing my wine a little delicately.
Well, fair enough. I guess I'll have to do the drinking for us.
Oh, I was going to ask you to do exactly that. I'm trying not to sound like Darth Vader and Grace Jones just had a child. I know this wine particularly well because I drink it fairly often. Your thoughts on it for those people who maybe haven't had it?
Oh, yeah, it's one of my favorites from the estate. I think it's a beautiful expression of Stellenbosch Cabernet. Cassis, beautiful fruit. Everything you kind of are looking for. Great mouthfeel. It's wine that I've drank a fair share of myself, and I think we actually did a comparison of the 2016 and 18. So really cool to now.
Two vintages that often fall into a little gap between slightly more happy 4 years.
Heroes of 17 and 19. Well, 15, 17, 19. If you actually think about it, they're all have their place in South African wine law. But I think, there's no denying it's a phenomenally well-made cab.
And one you could be having alongside dinner at Indochine. Tell me a little bit very quickly about that. I know it's Chef Virgil has merged different strands of Asia together into this wonderful journey of food. What was your meal like?
No, it's wonderful. The new menu is called Wonders of the Cape, and it is this fantastic showcase of Cape ingredients, Cape produce, but all through, as you say, that Pan-Asian lens that he is so well known for. Of course, beautifully paired with some Delaire wines. I think, if they are, whoever wins the prize, they should definitely check out Indochine.
And tell me a little bit about that Asian food and Asian wine, because it's often a question that comes up. Hang on, we're eating some food with spice. The go-to is a cheap and nasty lager that will just be as neutral and forgettable as possible. When chosen well, though, wine and slightly spicy food can be an utter delight.
Yeah, I think it's such a, it's a misconception that, spice and wine are just absolutely no goods. I think if you look, they've got a beautiful MCC or Cape Classique now that, is wonderful with spicy food. Even their Sauvignon Blanc, which are,
Have you just endorsed a Sauvignon Blanc, Steve Steinfeld?
Sauvignon Blanc. I'm a convert, and gladly so. I think we are reaching a point where we are making some fantastic Sauvignon Blancs.
I never thought I would hear the day.
Neither did I, but I have to say, and it's I think Inez in particular is a very good food wine, and especially with a bit of spice, it does play very nicely.
All right. We've got some more terrific guests coming up. We go to London in just a moment for Greg Sherwood. Greg Malocca has joined us as well. He's just finished his third champagne breakfast of the day and will be slipping in. And Michael Jordan will be wrapping up the show for us from Stellenbosch. Last one, though, Steve, before you go and enjoy the rest of the spot, Muscov.
Yeah.
From what you're seeing so far, spending a lot of time all over the place, but in the Cape in particular, 2023 harvest as a wine drinker, a wine writer, are you excited?
Yeah, very excited. I mean, I think more pressingly is 2021. I think that is going to show itself to be an absolutely cracking vintage. I think everyone's a bit, hesitant to call it yet because it does follow that 15, 17, 19 progression. But if that is the case, then all is set for 2023 to knock it out the park. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the results are once we can get our hands on a few bottles in 3 or 4 years.
Well, I think I said in Durbanville Sauvignon Blancs that were released about 2 months ago. So we'll find out as soon as we can. And I know we'll have you back on the show to talk about that and more soon. Thank you very much. Steve is charging off to go and buy some Delaire and enter that competition so that he and Zoe can go and have a romantic weekend away together. While he does that, we have London on the horizon and Greg Sherwood, who is joining us. And it's appropriate to have Greg on this very special edition, given he is such a good friend of the show. He is also the South African Mayor of Wine in London and does such a terrific job. I'll be in a slightly different space. Greg, welcome back to the show. And I think now, although it is all over the internet, you can officially tell us on the show. It was a bit cloak and dagger last time, but now the big boss, so to speak, at Museum Wines.
Hi, Dan. Good to join you again. It's been a little while. It's been a bit of a hectic time since I saw you at Cape Wine, but be back. And hopefully you can hear me all well and good. But greetings from a cold London.
Lovely to have you on the show and on a fairly iconic day for Dan Really Likes Wine. My journey and your journey have interwoven a great deal over the last 6 and a bit years as you've very kindly shared your immense wine knowledge, and we'll get you to do exactly that on the show today. And then kick off with part of the conversation we had there with Steve, and that's around the 2023 vintage. You may be far away, but you are closer to the harvest than most. What's your sense of how this year is going to shape up as a wine year for South Africa?
Well, as you know, wine buyer and a fine enthusiast, I keep a very close eye on new vintages, even though it's going to be years until, well, it'll be a few weeks until we get the first Sauvignon Blanc out the tank, but it'll be years till we get the iconic reds that I love to drink. But listening to what people like Mike Radcliffe are causing waves on the Twitter this morning, saying 2023 the best vintage of the decade. He got a bit of flack for people came back and said, but I think what he means is that it's an incredible idea for certain varieties, certain wines. So he's very excited. I'm off to Cape Town tomorrow actually so I will be tasting for 10 days, getting a better grip on the winemakers who are kind of finishing off now, some of them, or starting some of them. But very excited to be back. First time since Cape Town. So I'm gonna try and take a bit out of town, place from barrel, and just get a grasp on the vintage. But I think it's sounding very, very exciting. Hopefully the consumer won't be put off by the slightly. They like even numbers, like 1,000, 50. But 2023, we can make it. We can make it. Must have vintage if the wine's good.
All right, well, the seal of approval from Greg Sherwood carries considerable weight, which leads rather nicely into a couple of wines that are sitting on the new Dan Really Likes Wine pop-up with Norman Goodfellows that, Greg, you will know rather well. And there are two in particular I'd like to get your thoughts on. The first of these, from a very, very good friend of yours, a good friend of ours, the inimitable Ian Nadir, one of the modern greats of South African winemaking and someone who had a big hand in the career of Ibn Sadi, amongst others. And we've got, and I don't think this will last very long because it's a cracker of wine to have, some of the 2015 Cinsault that Ian has produced. Now, I think that was one of the early examples of people realizing in South Africa, Greg, just how good our Cinsault could be in its own right, as opposed to playing a quiet role in the background behind some Cabernet Sauvignon and old 70s, early 80s style blend.
I mean, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I was studying I've said the Cinsault, you had to taste an important variety in the industry, in the makeup, as was Colombard and Chenin, all these other workhorse varieties. Everybody obviously wanted to drink the top Shiraz and Cabernet. Back then, these co-ops, those tasted like jam with jam. But Ian was one of people with Sadi and a couple others who hang on, just like he's done with Colombard. We can make really, really good wine. We've got some incredible grapes. I was a bit annoyed when you said, "Oh, we're going to be tasting 15," because I'm a bit long sold out of that. I don't even know if I've got 10 bottles knocking around in my cellar. So delicious. When Ian was over last year, November, for a big tour of the UK, we went to a very good friend, and he gave us the 2014 of the Old Vine Darling. So, and I picked it as South African, as no idea. But the 15 was. Just the 14 was finishing. 15 kind of came onto the market. It's and we could see it instantly. I'm just looking here. Ben from the Darling, who we sadly lost a few years ago. They were about 37 years old, and 15 was an incredible for all varieties, but. That 15 cents really typified that fragrant Marzipan Turkish side. And always, rolls out these textures, but that was kind of the antithesis of, just classic Old Vine Cinsault. And he said, Rosa doesn't say it to people. And when she says that 15 was one of her favorite Cinsaults and favorite wines that she used to drink. He obviously found in the vineyard, but incredibly impressive wine, which was, thankfully followed by, 16 Bath Dance, which he's kind of named now. So briefly, I couldn't join you with the 15 Cinsault, but it's only 10:52 here in London. But I do like a bit of breakfast wine. But I do have a glass of Opar Willem 2019 from Ian, which I'm going with you now, and got 80%. Cinsault from that same Darling vineyard, which would probably be about 44, 45 years old now in this wine. But 15, if people in South Africa buy it, I mean, wow, incredible. I mean, you won't get that here anymore. If people sell it, people about it.
Well, if you were looking for something seriously cool to buy that 2015 Sensei, I think checks just about every box there. As from Greg, we have another Greg standing by in the form of Greg Maloka, as well as another special guest in the form of Michael Jordan to wrap up the show. But just before we do that, very quickly, one last one for you, Greg. One of the other wines we've got on the digital pop-up, a new member of the Cape Winemakers Guild, following in his father's footsteps, Christo Lariche, heir to Etienne's legacy, and one he's following on himself with great success. We've got not under the Lariche label, but this under the rather cool and funky Spider Pig label, the Black Pig Cabernet Sauvignon, as well as some of the old Yay Cinsault, which is also made by Etienne. Yes, it's fun. Yes, it looks cool and engaging and slightly cartoonish in terms of the brand, but that entire brand is underscored by some very serious wine.
So yeah, I'm wearing a cap to and Mornay, Mornay again. Right. I do actually have a Brode and a Spider Pig cap in my office. If I'd known, I would have worn them for you. But they did send me samples of the whole range a couple of years ago, and I thought they were very, very serious wines for the money and very, very well made. Of course, I love Christo's wine. So now, as I'm going to get to, so moving on years, I'm now a fine wine director at Museum Wines, who are one of the top South African in the UK. And Christo's wine has always been my favorite. Will continue to be with it's great that he's involved in a project like the Spider Pig. There's certainly some, everything from the roads reds, serious wines, but a bit of that kind of fun for the market. Not everything serious has to look like a Bordeaux kind of.
There you go. Greg Sherwood giving thumbs up to a couple of wines on the Dan Really Likes Wine pop-up. Look out for Greg being back in South Africa in the next few weeks, so lock your cellar doors very firmly. And look out for Greg and myself co-hosting a dinner in London last week of May. We'll be doing a rather special evening. Details of that to follow. And in just a moment, we'll remind you once again of the origin story of Dan Really Likes Wine and wrap up with Michael Jordan. And it's his fault entirely that this show actually exists. Before we do that, though, very lucky to have swinging through the doors one of the great food and wine personalities, as well as top young up-and-coming DJs of Johannesburg, and a good friend of mine, good friend of the show, Greg Maloka. Lovely to see you.
I've never sat this close to you. I don't know,
it's slightly unnerving for us both. It's very special to have you on because this is a very special day for me, for Dan Really Likes Wine, as we kick off this journey with Norman Goodfellows. And I know that it will be one that excites you simply because our shared mission of Dan Really Likes Wine and Norman Goodfellows is to tell more wine stories, to get more people to understand just how good South African wine is, how much exciting wine there is out there. Yeah. And as a man who does a fair amount of research himself and is so passionate about our wine people and about the wine that we produce, I know that sits very much on your horizon.
It does. So, I mean, the research you refer to is a lot of the drinking that I have to do. So it's a very decent way of saying I'm a functional alcoholic. Thanks for that. But yeah, South Africa is a vibrant country in many ways, and I think that with platforms like yours and spaces like these, just that discovery is incredible. I mean, I was walking around here earlier, and I felt like I was doing a shorter version of the winelands. Just walk through all of the winelands, all in quick space, but. Yeah, much like the arts, which I know is something that's a big passion. I mean, you guys have been talking about Delaire Graff. I've been to the property. I've seen the space. I just think it's like a brilliantly put together environment. Not just for the wine, but just like the enjoyment of space. And yeah, as you say, our shared passion is just getting everyone out there to experience the magic that South Africa has.
And then magic is such a good word because it encompasses so much about what is right about South African wine. Yes, there is the simple magic of turning a grape into this extraordinary glass or bottle of wine, but also there are the people around it, there's the beauty around it, there's this sense that there are so many different elements that when you combine them, it really is sorcery of the very best sort.
No, absolutely. And I think the missing ingredient in all wine is, I guess, again, what you and I are trying to do is to kind of spread the word. You know, when I was in radio in my younger years, one of the secrets to our success was understanding that the people that are working at the radio station are merely guardians of a platform, right? The expression really comes from the audience that you service. And I think similarly, what would be a really fantastic kind of next wave in South African winemaking is when, the broader citizens add their magic to the winemakers, kind of dream to create something magical. I think there's something special about that.
There's also, I think, been a real transition in South Africa.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Are you going to pour me some wine?
Bring a glass over.
Okay, is this a wine show? Or can I get some tea?
It's the first time you've actually ever arrived without a glass in your hand already. So there we go. Let me interrupt myself. Have a sip of that. This is the 2016 Broad-Muscat. We've been talking quite a bit about how 2016 is a slightly hidden vintage between the blockbuster 15 and the aristocrat that is 17. And 16, not just at Delaire Graff, but particularly this Broad-Muscat. 7 years in, it's had that bottle age. It's a wonderful symphony of red. And it's hitting a really nice drinking window.
7 years is brilliant. I think it's kind of like a sweet spot especially for wines that age 6 to 10 years. I think, that kind of 7 year spot is always nice. It's really lovely. Thank you. So you were asking a question earlier.
I was. I have to try and remember what it was. Now, I was going to ask you about this transition in terms of our, in the nicest possible way of putting it, our maturing South African wine audience, where still on a smaller scale than would be ideal, but I think we're starting to understand more, appreciate more, realize how good South African wine is, and particularly value. As Jason put it very clearly at the start of the show, he went over to Europe, and I think he's still paying that trip off after 2 glasses of village Burgundy somewhere in Paris. We're at a stage where more people are realizing what's out there, but the journey does still have a long way to go.
Look, it does, and again, for me, it's a massive opportunity, right? Just by sheer volume, the number of people who are interested in wine, in our country, and dare I say, continent as well, is quite a big number of people, and I think because there's kind of been this gap, right, between. I made an example of the radio stations we used to run back in the day. I mean, if you think about YFM, right? I know you're not old enough to know what YFM is. But
nowhere near.
If you think about what YFM was, so we had a lot of young people who had finally found a space, right, to voice, to express stuff, right? And our job was to extract all of that energy into content. It's the same kind of process in anything, actually, really, right? Where a market that was previously unserviced and now serviced, but giving them expression in that space is I think, an incredible opportunity for South African wine broadly, but obviously for people that make great wine, because there's a lot of wine, and then there's wine.
We have waiting for us as our final guest today, Michael Jordan, before he starts his lunchtime Pilates class. But before we jump over to Michael in Stellenbosch, just a final question. It's on the philosophy of wine, and something you and I have waxed over for many hours in the past. Part of our journey, as Dan really likes wine now with Norman Goodfellows, is to get more people to discover what makes a tick for you and me. So what sums up for you why wine plays such a fundamental role in who you are?
It's a big question, but some of my most special moments, some of my most engaging moments, some of my most incredible experiences have been in a space where there was wine, or wine was celebrated, or or just involved wine. I've met some really incredible people and had some really amazing conversations. I was there to share a glass of wine, and I ended up meeting some really incredible people. I don't want to talk about how I met you, but so I think outside of just the art that goes into making the wine, all the technical and very incredible work that winemakers kind of put into creating the juice, I think the life around it is broader, and that's kind of the magic that we talk about around what it inspires in people, right? And just kind of those introductions, and I think we give it a lot less credit for that.
It's a wonderful way of putting it. Greg Malooka, we have many more glasses to share.
Cheers, brother. Thank you.
Thank you for being
Thanks
part
for having
of
me.
our new journey. Wine connoisseur, amongst the many, many, many things he gets up to. Hanging out with celebrities and having a good time and living the good life and showing us all how we should be doing it. Speaking of people who live the good life, currently, I think he's on 8,212 digital startups that he is currently running somewhere around the world. He's also the person responsible indirectly for Dan Really Likes Wine starting up, and so exactly the person to finish off today's show as we celebrate the brand new journey with Norman Goodfellows, live from somewhere in Stellenbosch, probably in a jacuzzi. Hello, Michael Jordan.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
I'm extremely well. Lovely to see you. And look, I know we disagree ever so often on the exact detail of the backstory, but if we distill it to a very simple recollection, it was you accosting me at a wine evening in the back end of 2016 who bullied me into getting this going. And now, 6 and a bit years later, here we start. Here we sit with a brand new beginning for Dan Really Likes Wine.
So you see, Dan, you have two attributes that stand out. There are many more, of course, but the one is you're really passionate about wine. You know your wine, and the other one is you're actually quite funny. And I think I recognized that and told you that wine takes itself too seriously, and we need a spokesperson, someone like you, that can talk about wine in a way that's funny.
Well, you're very kind to pick those up. I suspect it might have been through a slight veneer of gently wooded Chardonnay, but we take it nonetheless, and we find ourselves today not just with you to thank personally, Michael, for having put me on the particular journey to Dan Really Likes Wine, but also celebrating some of your wine, because we've got some Bartony and some Plaisir on the new Dan Really Likes Wine digital pop-up with Norman Goodfellows, which is now up and running as of today, the 1st of March. And one of those is the 2016 Cabernet Sauvignon. We were talking moments ago about the Botmuskov from just around the corner from you and how well that is drinking. This is drinking in terms of the Bartony 2016 just as well in the Magnum format. So the chance to celebrate a really good wine from Bartony, but also to celebrate a place, Michael, that has got such personal history for you and your family.
That's right. And what is wine without a story? And the story there, of course, is it was my grandfather's farm. It was sold out of the family, but we were able to buy it back. And for our kids now, it will be the 4th generation of Jordans on this particular property. It's a very hard one to farm, by the way. It's elevated 550 meters above sea level. The slopes are 45 degrees. So it's difficult to get water there, difficult to harvest, difficult to tend. But when vines suffer, they tend to produce the best quality grapes.
You speak as a man who ran FNB very successfully for many years. You're running Rain, running Bank Zero, running dozens and dozens of other incredible companies. I suspect most of them are a little more financially stable than being involved in the wine industry. But your relationship with the farm, with your grandparents notwithstanding, there is a magic, there is a charm to wine, as Greg so eloquently put it from his perspective, that even if it doesn't make you quite as much money as something else, or perhaps even loses you money just occasionally, there is just something about wine and what it represents that makes it quite difficult to escape from.
So then, first of all, I don't run those companies. I back exceptional people who run them. And that gives me great joy to create something out of nothing. And yes, of course, you're quite right. This wine farming business, it's not for the meek. It really is something one does out of the passion and the enjoyment. And I suppose my background being a banker is, in the end, as a banker, you don't really create anything tangible. And the nice thing about wine is it's something that you can touch and feel and drink and share with friends. And sometimes it's also a great way to come up with new ideas, new business ideas, or just have fun with mates. So it's a wonderful product, and it'll be with me for the rest of my life, as it will be, I'm sure, for all the people listening today.
Of course, the only downside is that you and I are a great example of the number of great businesses and solutions to global problems that we've come up with over one of our evening board meetings and a couple of bottles of wine. We just generally can't remember all the details the next day, so we do need to work on that particular aspect of it. There's also a slightly new addition to the broader wine family, and that's from just down the road. Been a couple of years now that Plaisir has been with us, the reborn and reformed version of Plaisir de Merle. We've got some magnums of the 2013 Cabernet Sauvignon from Plaisir, which are also drinking exquisitely at the moment. It is a new adventure. It is in the hands of the fearless and let's be honest, quite terrifying Rose Jordan. Another great venture and another opportunity to delve into this world of wine, Michael.
So then, first, just something about the two magnums that you have there. I mean, I happen to love magnums. I think the reasons of it's the right size to share. It's perfect for you and me at our board meetings, just the two of us. The second reason is it actually ages very well. You have the same amount of wine but less air, and if it ages better, it can develop better, which is great for Cabernet. And then the third one is that we, and then most winemakers in the world actually keep their best grapes for magnums, and they are sold with more discretion. So it really is the type of format that wine lovers love. But yes, to get to Plaisir, it was one of those things that we did during COVID. Estelle sold this grand old lady that came from 1693. I managed to go and plead to the bank to get a loan big enough to buy this farm. And Rose has set out in the last 2 years and has made an incredible amount of improvements from the cellar to the wine tasting area, taking out aliens. And the only thing we really know to do is to make an exceptional wine. So we're taking out the lower quality vineyards, ones that are virus, taking out the high yielding ones because that typically doesn't produce great grapes. And we hope in time to firmly establish Plaisir on the map as one of the great South African estates. It's nicely nestled between Stellenbosch and Paarl. It's got this, a great a mountain, the Simonsberg, that makes very interesting wines. And the Magnum that you are tasting, the 2013, actually comes from 5 different vineyards in Plaisir. So having that choice of so many vineyards, which is not something we have at Bartney, is also a great way to blend an excellent wine.
And it is a beautiful place. My brother and sister-in-law are staying there at the moment and having a wonderful time. You inadvertently contradict yourself there, Michael, having assured me that you don't run businesses at all. You simply have other people by detailing so perfectly exactly how these wines are made. You show just how much knowledge and understanding you do have of everything, which leads me to an appropriate finale just before we wrap up the show. We started with Mbali and Jason from Norman Goodfellows talking about this partnership we have going forward. Partnerships are the essence of so many of the businesses that you're now running and having so much fun with. Give us, if you will, not just wine specific, but a touch of the Jordan Stardust that will ensure that the Dan Really Likes Wine Norman Goodfellows partnership soars into the future and has me retired and living in Barbados by this time next year.
You know what, Dan? I think it's actually quite easy. It has to do with passion, which you clearly have for wine, and you've associated yourself with Norman Goodfellows, which has the same passion. But I want to come back to what I said at the start. I think one of the problems that wine has is it's too complex and too daunting. And what you are able to do is to democratize this, to make sure that you can talk about wine, but also in a way that is enjoyable. And ultimately, that's what it's about. When you start philosophizing about life, you shouldn't like what other people tell you to like. You should do what you want to do. You should eat what you want to eat, and you should drink what you like doing. And I think you are the perfect messenger, and Dan really likes wine, to do that for South African wine, not only here, but as you've demonstrated abroad as well. So I wish you all success. I've no doubt it's going to be a successful financial venture, but most importantly, it's going to be fun too.
Which is, of course, a fundamental of anything that we like to do. Michael, thank you, not just for being on the show and for being part of our digital pop-up with both Bartony and Pazir, but also thank you for browbeating me and stalking me and phoning me 3 days in a row until I finally did get Dan Really Likes Wine started, because if it wasn't for you, well, I'd probably be doing something boring like being an incredibly wealthy hedge fund manager or something like that. So, Michael, thank you, much appreciated, and I'll send you details for our next board meeting.
Thank you, and I'm honored to be your junior director.
There we go. And a wonderful junior director. He's got a great deal of potential, Michael Jordan. I tell you, this young man's going to go places. As I firmly believe is Dan Really Likes Wine in partnership with Norman Goodfellows. Today, the first of many, as we go forth to spread the gospel of South African wine, to demystify those parts which can sometimes feel really intimidating, but to also celebrate this extraordinary collection of people in South Africa who, vintage after vintage, are bringing out this most remarkable wine at prices that the rest of the world can barely believe. It's a long journey ahead of us. There'll be a lot of fun with it, a lot of new additions. We start with our digital pop-up, but there's plenty more to come after that. Look out for great events, great gatherings, and most importantly, many, many glasses raised to this wonderful South African wine industry that is only going to get bigger and better. To Jason and Barley and the team at Norman Goodfellows, cheers, thanks for the vote of faith, and here's to a wonderful journey ahead. And as always, thanks to the brilliant Ronaldo for putting everything together, and to Zoe, who does such a wonderful job. We'll see you tomorrow evening when our first live show of the new era kicks off, and we go back to our very first episode of Dan Really Likes Wine back in November 2016. Then it was the big guns. Tomorrow it's the return of the big guns, the Ernie L signature, which sits on our new digital pop-up, together with Villa Fonte Series C, the Gem from Waterford, and the Anthony Rupert Blend, 4 of the original big money, big South African wines. How do they fare now? We'll find out tomorrow evening. From Four Ways Crossing and Norman Goodfellows, thanks for joining us for a very special edition of the show. I've got some Delaire Graff Botmascop to finish, and you've got some Delaire Graff to buy if you want to be staying in luxury in Stellenbosch with this month's competition. See you live again tomorrow from Norman Goodfellows. Goodbye.